Welcome back to the MLB Rundown. I'm your host, Josh Shepardson. You can follow me on Twitter at BChad50, and I'm joined by CBSSports.com's RJ White, who you can follow on Twitter at RJWhite1. And I have to start off by saying it's been a beautiful few days here in central New York, and with the sunshine out, it's finally starting to feel like baseball season to me. If I remember correctly, RJ, you're in Florida, so this probably isn't as big of a deal to you, correct?
Yeah, it's been pretty sunny, sometimes raining like it usually is.
But all right, now that I've gushed about the nice weather and I've had my moment in the sun, so to speak, let's move on to something else that I'm excited about. Sample sizes are growing at this point, and now we are starting to have some useful information, and that means activity's picking up on the waiver wire. And as always, you wrote your Riding the Wave waiver wire piece for Fantasy Baseball Cafe that went up yesterday. Why don't you highlight a couple players from that you'd like to discuss a little bit more in depth?
Now, the first guy is a guy who really don't have a big sample size on yet. It's the guy that's the starting pitcher that's been the most added in CBSSports.com leagues. And that's Alex Colome, who's seen a big jump after just 2 nice starts to the season. He's obviously getting a late start after battling pneumonia this spring, but the early results have been pretty encouraging, which is causing everyone to run out and get him. The key thing to point out is that he's battled control issues throughout his professional career, and he was able to get through a total of 10 innings in his first 2 starts without walking anyone. One of those starts came against the Orioles, a team who doesn't walk much in general, but the other was against the Red Sox, who lead the league in walks this season. He's also seen a big jump in swinging strike rate in regards to his secondary pitches. If that holds, combined with the reduction in walks, we could be talking not just about a good low-level pitcher, but a potential star. I picked him up as I think the window to add him is going to slam shut with 1 or 2 more good starts. I mean, he's already up 28% in those leagues. So,
yeah, he has a nice arsenal that should allow him to combat both lefties and righties. So I like the call. Electric arm, and in addition to pointing out that he's demonstrated good control so far this year, good control last year. 15 starts at AAA Durham. 3.14 walk per 9 is certainly acceptable if he's going to continue to miss bats at the rate that he has. And Fangraphs has his ground ball rate of 46.4%. Not bad. Certainly playable. And backed by Tropicana Field as his home ballpark. Even if he does give up a few more fly balls, he does play in a nice environment for suppressing home runs. So definitely really like Colome. Live arm, guys like that tend to intrigue me. I've obviously harped on my love of velocity, and he has that. He has the strong secondary pitches. So who's another name that you'd like to discuss?
Well, I'm going to stay on the same team to talk about one of the most popular cuts in fantasy leagues this weekend. That's Steven Souza. He had a fantastic 10-day stretch in mid to late April where he was on fire. He hit 361 with a 410 on base and 778 slugging percentage, had 4 homers and 3 stolen bases and 36 at-bats across a 9-game stretch. Aside from that, he's been pretty bad, and we've seen him cut more and more in fantasy leagues as he's gotten further away from that slash line. What I am worried about the massive amount of strikeouts. He has 42 strikeouts and 98 at-bats, and that's awful no matter who you are. I think he's going to provide fantasy value at some point. His strikeout rate wasn't that bad in the minors, and he's still the guy who posted a 953 OPS in AA and a 1,022 OPS in AAA. So if I own a guy like Jake Marisnick or Alex Guerrero or Yasmani Tomas, especially if the latter two, I'm using them in the outfield instead of third base, I might try to do something like trade one of them for Souza and a slight starting pitcher upgrade, see where that gets me, because I think Souza could pay off eventually.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I mean, you have to love the power-speed combination too. Even if he continues to strike out at a high rate, we don't expect it to continue to be at the rate that it is now. Demonstrating great patience, 13.2% walk rate, something he did in the minors. He struck out in under 20% of his AAA plate appearances, so this strikeout rate really is very high for him. 23.5% strikeout rate at the AA level. So if he settles in between 25 and 28%, his above average power and his ability to chip in stolen bases, he's got 4 homers and 4 stolen bases already, certainly make him appealing, even if it comes with, say, a 250 average instead of upwards of higher than that. So I own Souza in a couple leagues. I'm holding, and I'm a fan. And if you're in a league that counts OBP, you definitely have to like Souza even more because of that high walk rate.
Yeah, and then before I move on to the guy I want to highlight in my deep league ad recommendations, I want to talk about a guy I didn't write about, and that's Dilson Herrera. I didn't write about him as a deep ad recommendation because it appeared that David Wright will be back relatively soon. But news just came out today that he's been shut down due to back pain, so that should give Herrera at least 2 weeks of fantasy relevance, maybe even more. He was excellent offensively at high A and double A last year in his age 20 season. And he ranked as a top 50 prospect by Baseball America before the season. He was out to a hot start at hitter-friendly Las Vegas this year before being promoted to man second base, while Daniel Murphy fills in at third for Wright. So I think he could potentially give a few weeks of middle infield relevance in deeper leagues. So I grab him if you're struggling at that position, knowing that you're probably going to have to replace him pretty soon anyway.
Yeah, I completely agree. His numbers for Double A Binghamton were very impressive for his age. 10 homers, 9 stolen bases, 10.4% walk rate, 18.7% strikeout rate, and a nice triple slash line of 340, 406, 560. And keep in mind, this is the Double A. I'm sorry, I was going to say International League, but it's the Eastern League. So we're not talking about a super hitter-friendly environment. We're not talking about the PCL. He put those numbers up in a fair environment. So do like the Herrera call. Age obviously could result in some hiccups, but at middle infield is so bad, and he looks like a well above average offensive player that if he gets his feet under him quickly or he does well before the book gets out on him, you're definitely going to get some relevance from him. So I like that call a lot, and that's good news to have on the bad news for David Wright, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think if you are struggling at the middle infield position in deeper leagues, it's not like you're going to find the one big guy that's going to carry you the rest of the year. You're going to have to be riding waves like this. So that's why I mentioned him as a guy to pick up for a few weeks, and then if he gets sent back down, if he doesn't have a full-time role, you can then move on to the next guy as you try to cobble together respectable numbers at the mid infield position. One guy who I think could have long-term value as a middle infielder is Chris Taylor. I was interested to see who would win the Mariners shortstop battle this spring, as I thought either Taylor or Brad Miller could have nice sleeper value as a cheap middle infield option if one of them was getting all of the bats. Miller won by default when Taylor suffered a broken wrist, but he couldn't really do anything in the first month of the season to build confidence in that offensive potential. So the team has installed Taylor as the starting shortstop on a regular basis, it looks like, and the team's talking Miller up as a potential super sub and giving him outfield reps. Taylor isn't going to smack the cover off the ball, but he has the potential to provide solid batting average after hitting over 310 in each of his minor league seasons. He also has some steals potential, having swiped 75 bags in 1,090 at-bats in the minors, which works out to a rate of about 34 steals per 500 at-bats. If he can hit 285 with not much power and 30 steals in the majors, that's Alcides Escobar production from last season. If he can do that and show even a power range of like 8 to 10 homers, that's what Jose Reyes did last year. So it's not difficult to see him turning into a quality fantasy option, even in standard leagues with regular playing time, if he can capture what he's done in the minors even a little bit.
Yeah, and to be honest, coming into the year, I really like Taylor more than Miller. I won't say significantly more, but there was definitely a clear favorite in my mind. And Miller struggled. I think that he struggled enough that this talk of him being a super utility player and opening the door for Taylor, I think that's something that can stick. And getting consistent plate appearances from a guy who can chip in here and there is definitely valuable, because middle infield is just dreadful. I mean, you're going to hear us say it throughout the year. And cobbling production together, like you said, is huge. But Taylor might have a little bit more sticking power than some other options at middle infield.
Yeah, I definitely take him over Herrera.
Yep. There's a player I'd like to discuss who I wrote about for Rotographs that went up on Friday, today, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. Big right-handed pitcher that I'm completely enamored with. CBS gamers aren't sleeping on him. He's owned in 75% of CBS leagues, but those in ESPN leagues are sleeping at 26.7% ownership, and he's owned in just 31% of Yahoo leagues. This mystery big right-hander is Jimmy Nelson of the Milwaukee Brewers. I looked under the hood a little bit for him, and I came to the conclusion that if he has a bit of luck picking up wins, which I would expect the Brewers' offense to be better than it has been. It's been dreadful, but they've gotten Carlos Gomez back. They just got Scooter Gennett back, so a little bit of luck picking up some wins. We're looking at a guy who could be a top 50 starting pitcher. Nelson dominated in the hitter-friendly Pacific Coast League last year. He totaled 2.97 FIP. Stumbled a little bit in his 14 appearances, 12 of which were starts for the Brewers, totaling a 4.93 ERA. But that ERA was rather unlucky. His ERA estimators liked him a lot more. Posted a 3.78 FIP, 3.92 xFIP, 3.76 SIERA. He enters play today, probable to start, but he's improved upon his strikeout rate from last year, kicking it up to 21.1%. His walk rate has slipped a little bit. He's hovering at 9.7%, but that's largely the product of one messy turn. It's early in the season, and one awful start, one clunker can really gum things up a little bit. I'm expecting more strikeouts from Jimmy Nelson going forward. He has an 11.4% swinging strike rate according to Fangraphs. That's good for tied for 10th among qualified starters, and that ties with a guy named Felix Hernandez, pretty good pitcher. I love Nelson's ability to generate ground balls at a high rate as well. And the reason that I'm really buying into Nelson and buying into the increase in missed bats is the addition of a spike curveball. Eno Saris of Fangraphs discussed that in depth. Had some pictures of it, had some video of the break on it. Used it in the spring, has used it quite a bit early in the season, and has developed trust in it. And it complements his slider, which is actually his better breaking ball, quite well. Gives him a weapon to combat left-handed batters with. He had a really bad changeup that just was not doing the trick. And since I do trust his curveball, and he seems to trust his curveball, I think he's a guy that's not going to have a monstrous platoon split, and he does a little bit of everything that I'm looking for. So he's a guy that I would like to target and have tried to target in a couple leagues, and will be going after quite aggressively. Are you a fan of Jimmy Nelson, RJ?
I think he has the tools. I just think he needs to put it all together. And really, we haven't seen him persevere through struggles and have success yet. You know, he just kind of needs that light to come on. His ERA last season was inflated a bit by a high hit rate, but when dominant pitchers at the minor league level struggle in the bigs, it's up to them to grind through it and finally find that success without losing what made you great in the first place by tinkering with something else or by just not having that kind of confidence. We haven't seen him, hit that successful stride yet this season. And really, it was only that one bad start, sure, but now you have to get past that. You have to become the pitcher you need to be successful at the major league level without having that kind of break in confidence. The walks are up, but he's also had a slightly favorable hit rate this year, and his strikeout has remained stagnant overall, across what he did last year. So I think when you combine the higher walk rate with the favorable hit rate, I mean, that's about what his whip's going to be anyway. I definitely think there is something there. I mean, you don't get through 16 PCL starts in a half season while giving up 3 runs or less in all of them and allowing just 3 homers combined if you can't pitch. He's worth owning in fantasy, I would say. I'd probably still continue to run him out there every week, considering he has just the 1 dud in 5 starts. If I owned him, I don't know that I'm going to aggressively target him. I'm kind of on the fence whether I'd rather have him or Colome, even though Colome's only had the 2 starts. I think I slightly lean toward Colome, so I don't know if I'm completely bought in on Nelson, but I agree that the stuff is there for him to have success.
Yeah, and that's an interesting debate because Colome is definitely in that same line of pitcher in my mind. A guy with some high octane stuff that can miss some bats, has had some control issues in the past, but has pitched well. So definitely 2 guys that I would say are ranked fairly closely for the remainder of the season. And that's going to close the beginning of the show. Let's close the show with my favorite portion, and that's going to the forums for a few questions. The first of 3 comes from Red Cane Fox 2009. They're in a 12-team head-to-head keeper league where there's no draft pick cost for your keepers. Should Red Cane Fox 2009 deal the injured duo of Anthony Rendon and Yan Gomes for Nolan Arenado and Gregory Polanco?
Well, the big key here is that he has Stephen Vogt at catcher, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So even if Gomes healthy, Vogt should still be starting every day for this team. And considering that really makes us a trade of an injured Rendon plus a spare part for Arenado and Polanco, and I like that deal. Rendon was certainly considered a top-tier third baseman coming into the spring, but Arenado wasn't really too far behind. I mean, it's not like he's chopped liver or anything. Arenado's still young, still hitting in cores, still providing excellent offensive numbers. I think he's a fine third base keeper moving forward. I wouldn't be too devastated losing Rendon to get him, considering Rendon's going to have probably third base eligibility only going into next year. They had planned to put him at third base. Now that Escobar's hitting, who knows what they're going to do? He might continue to have second base eligibility. So if Red King's team really needs a second baseman long term, maybe he might consider that, but I do the trade. I wouldn't be too devastated losing Rendon and to get Arenado. Plus Polanco, another young guy with a world of upside if everything begins to click. I mean, he showed 5-category fantasy potential in the minors, and he's still only 23 years old. So Polanco isn't just a nobody in this deal. He's actually a pretty significant piece too.
Yeah, I really like this swap. I mean, for starters, you're getting 2 healthy players back for 2 guys who are not contributing right now. I don't think that you're sacrificing much, if anything, in terms of long-term upside. And the fact that Vogt is your catcher gives you that flexibility to move Gomes for a guy who has probably a higher fantasy ceiling because he has a chance to be a true 5-category contributor in Gregory Polanco. So I would make that swap. And as RJ pointed out, if Rendon ends up playing just third base, there has been talk of him playing second base. That loss of second base eligibility definitely hurts his fantasy value, and I would say he and Arenado are fairly close in long-term upside and potential. So I would make that swap, and I wouldn't hesitate to do so. The second question comes from user Big Ant. Big Ant wants to know, should they accept the deal? They were offered Corey Kluber in a 2-for-1 package for Drew Smyly and either Taijuan Walker or Anibal Sanchez. That's a deal that I would make personally. Kluber dropped to 0-5 yesterday through 5 starts, but his ERA of 5.04 is well above his 3.18 FIP and 3.12 xFIP. He's struggling with his strand rate. And he's been a little unlucky in regards to his BABIP, but his swinging strike rate remains high, and I'm not seeing any red flags in his pitch FX data. Is there anything that I'm missing, RJ? Would you make the swap as well?
No, I mean, it's been through 7 starts, but really the concern is only through his last 4 starts, and he's been really unlucky in those starts, where he's combined for a 4.49 BABIP with a 65% strand rate. It happens. It happens to almost all pitchers. It doesn't happen to all the best pitchers every single season, but I guarantee you, and even the best pitchers' careers, they've had a 4-start string of bad starts, where they just get unlucky. Best thing to do at this point is to take advantage of an owner's impatience, especially if the price is just 2 good arms, whether neither is particularly elite. Smyly has been pretty great this year, but it's been only 3 starts. That's still a pretty small sample size. I'm not willing to put anywhere near Kluber's level just yet. The other 2 guys, I'd probably trade Walker in a redraft and Sanchez in a keeper or dynasty, but I think I'd definitely take the deal either way and hope that the reigning Cy Young Award winner hasn't forgotten how to pitch after 7 starts.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the conclusion I came to as well. I think this is a great buy low opportunity, and the fact that you're being approached by the other owner is even better. I don't know, so I would have made that offer. I would have felt like it was probably slightly on the low ball side, but if they're coming to you, give them the option to pick whoever that second pitcher is and go ahead and accept that deal and get it done. The third question and the final question comes from user Angels7777, who's in a 10-team 5x5 head-to-head non-keeper league, and they want to know if they should swap Ian Kinsler for Mookie Betts.
Well, we saw a year-to-year decline in Kinsler's numbers from 2011 to 2013, and while he was able to level that off somewhat in 2014, he did lead the majors in plate appearances, which takes a little of the shine off his counting numbers, which were 17 homers, 15 stolen bases. His average has been up this year, and his walk rate has been really impressive, as his 14 walks this year are nearly half of the 29 walks he drew last season in over 700 plate appearances. But add that to him not hitting for much power, which are 7 extra base hits and none of those being homers, we could be seeing a different approach at the plate for Kinsler. He could be just looking to get on base however possible, and not run into outs, because I think he only has like 2 or 3 steals this year, as opposed to trying to hit for power, find the gaps, hit some homers. If he's not that batter anymore, I think Betts is clearly the guy with the better upside here. A low BABIP has done Betts' average in, but he's shown excellent power and speed so far. He's heated up over the last week, smacking 3 homers and 3 doubles and 20 at-bats. And while, of course, you don't expect him to keep that kind of production up all season, do you think we're ever going to see Ian Kinsler do that in a week at some point this year, especially if this is the hitter he's going to be? I don't, and that makes me put Betts over Kinsler pretty clearly at this point.
Yeah, and I was surprised at the forum responses. They were overwhelmingly in favor of holding on to Kinsler, but I'm with you. I would make the swap for Betts. Judging by the roster, I'm going to assume that Mookie Betts is second base eligible in this league. I'm guessing probably a Yahoo league where he does carry second base eligibility. Kinsler has 0 homers and, as you said, 3 stolen bases. High batting average is nice. He's hitting line drives. He's walking. So that's probably going to give him a fairly high run scored floor, but that lack of power and speed is alarming. Betts certainly doesn't have a lack of power speed with 5 homers and 5 stolen bases, and his 236 BABIP. You referenced the bad BABIP being the cause for his low average, and 236 is ugly. He's making good hard contact. His line drive rate is down a little bit, but I see no red flags in his plate approach right now. I'd expect that average to be on the rise, and that coupled with the power speed combination makes him clearly the higher upside player. And it's not as if he's leading off for a bad club. The Red Sox can score runs in bunches as well. So I think the run production potential is similar between the two, and I would certainly swap possibly a little bit of batting average for what should be a substantial gain in power and speed.
Yeah, and it's not like he's been consistently bad or anything, even though the average is bad. He's had huge games for the Red Sox. He's made huge plays. He's turned a lot of heads, even though the season numbers don't look great. You know, he had that one game where I think he made a leaping catch at the wall to save a home run. Then he turned around and hit a 3-run homer in the next inning and followed it up with like a 2-run double. Some crazy amount of thing where people are like, God, this guy's going to win an MVP eventually. So when a player's doing that, making enough plays and showing enough promise, I think the Red Sox wouldn't even think about sending him down because he has a 230 batting average and they think he needs more work. I mean, it's pretty clear he's here to stay at this point.
Yeah, definitely, and that's very important. I mean, he's not going anywhere. He's his glove's playing well right now, which will always buy a guy a little bit of time with the bat. And I mean, the bat's been fairly good as well. It really is just a BABIP issue right now. So I'd make that swap. And on that note, we're going to wrap up the podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for hopping on, RJ. It was fun as always.
Thanks.
All right, tune in next week, and we will be back with another edition of the MLB Rundown. Take care.